Okay, so I'm Kate Hayden. If you weren't in the session yesterday when I spoke with the Division of Energy, and I'm introducing Gretchen Lehman and Zachary Teutsch, who are going to deliver this session on financial counseling, the next generation. And they specifically, well, actually, Gretchen told me I did not need to read her bio, but it is so impressive. Did you guys see it in the folders? Gretchen and Zachary both had impressive bios, so I'll just give you a little brief summary of who they are. So Gretchen is the program manager at Assets for Independence, which is the AFI program, in the Office of Community Services. And prior to joining us there, she was a social science analyst at HHS's Office of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, or ASPE as we call it. She was there for 6 years, and she came to HHS as a Presidential Management Fellow after earning her Master's in Social Work with a concentration in Social and Economic Development from Washington University in St. Louis. She's also served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal and completed her undergraduate degree at Goshen College in Goshen, Indiana. So pretty impressive. And then Zachary, he is an expert too. Mr. Teutsch is a member of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Office of Financial Empowerment. His work focuses on measuring, supporting, and optimizing projects that help low-income and economically vulnerable Americans. Before joining the Bureau, he led the AFL-CIO's Investor Education Project and was a faculty member at the National Labor College. Zachary graduated with honors from Brown University, where he studied economics, sociology, and organizational behavior. And while working in the movement, he was with SEIU, AFSCME. I'm not sure what any of these acronyms mean, but they sound very impressive. And so we're going to hear from them talk about financial capability, and I know that's a big buzzword in our industry right now, and you all are all familiar with financial literacy and capability. And a lot of you, or a lot of us, wish that there was some way that we could kind of incorporate that into our LIHEAP programs, and if not, make it a requirement for even some of our LIHEAP recipients that could benefit from it. So I'm here to tell you that it could be incorporated into your plans. It could be proposed as one of your Assurance 16 activities. And, financial capability is important to our LIHEAP recipients because it affects their ability to be able to pay their utility bills or their heating energy assistance needs. So it does benefit our clients to understand some of these concepts that we're going to be hearing about today. There's been an effort to create a continuous service for our LIHEAP recipients, and this is, these tools that we're going to be hearing about today, Your Money, Your Goals from Zachary, and the planning guide from Gretchen. They can really help us maybe approach that task. So one other thing I kind of wanted to mention in the notes that I was making on how what they're going to talk about ties to LIHEAP is I often hear people say we like to call our LIHEAP recipients participants or customers or what have you. But if they're really just receiving LIHEAP and that's all they're doing, then they really are just recipients. They're not really participating, in my opinion, in a whole lot other than receiving that benefit. So these conversations, or what they're going to talk about, is a way to actually make them become participants in the program. So I think that's kind of interesting. And so what we're asking you to do is, after listening to their presentation, is to think about where you're having your conversations with your LIHEAP recipients, your financial conversations, and the different ways that you might be able to benefit from what these guys are going to share with us today. So thank you for joining us, and with no further ado, Gretchen.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kate. We look like we're a divided front sitting up here, but we just all have our own preferences about where we sit and stand. So I'm thrilled to be here today to present to you alongside my colleague from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I'm going to, that's a very long title, I'm going to give a brief background on the Assets for Independence program just to kind of explain why the Office of Community Services has created this resource. And then I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the resource, the planning guide. The full title is Building Financial Capability, a Planning Guide for Integrated Services. I won't say that again. I'll just call it the guide. So as Kate mentioned, I'm the program manager for the Assets for Independence program in the Office of Community Services. I'm just going to call it AFI from here on out. AFI is administered by the Office of Community Services like LIHEAP, but it's very different from LIHEAP in that it's a competitive discretionary program as opposed to a block grant program. And it's much smaller. So we were created in 1998 to demonstrate and support an asset-based approach for increasing the economic self-sufficiency of low-income families and individuals and families. So asset building is a term that we are often talking about related to AFI. And the idea behind asset building really has developed as a complement to income support strategies, which I think most of us are familiar with in addressing poverty. But the idea behind helping low-income people build assets, tangible assets such as a home, and intangible assets such as their human capital, education, so they can increase opportunities and increase their economic stability, was really meant to think about, this is sort of the metaphor we think about, like, we've got the safety net, but we need a ladder to help people get out. So you want to make sure that they're not falling through, but you also want to help them get out of poverty. And then Kate mentioned financial capability. It is a bit of a buzzword, at least around our office, but it also is a new term for a lot of people. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background about that. It's a broader term that has been coming into use as opposed to financial education, because it's not just about the education, it's also about the access and the skills so that you actually have the capacity to manage things. You may know how interest works, but if the bank isn't willing to give you a loan, you don't actually have any capability to get, a mortgage or something like that. So there's all these things come together for how people interact and manage their finances. And it also gives us, from a policy perspective, a broader set of places to look at for people's lives and a broader framework for thinking about people's financial and economic well-being. Another term you'll be hearing from my colleague is financial empowerment. Those are a little bit harder to kind of sort out what the differences are, but it's another buzzword in this area. So then the other thing that I'm going to be talking about is financial capability integration. And this is a little pretty straightforward graphic to show what we mean by integration. And I was listening to the panel before this, and that really is talking about a lot of integration too. It's thinking about how you integrate the concepts of health and well-being and a healthy home, right, and a green home into the whole weatherization and package in that area. So this is another, in thinking about a human's well-being, there's a lot of different facets of that, and the financial capability is one piece of that. And this strategy of integrating this into other services has been sort of coming around in recent years, a way of trying to reach more people when they're already interacting with a system. So here are some examples from the real world, because it can be a kind of a vague idea, of places where some sort of social service program or social service effort was integrating another kind of financial capability service. And these are not just financial education. I'll point out, there's tax assistance services integrated with, pre-moving slides. Tax assistance services integrated with child support enforcement. Bank accounts integrated with youth employment programs. Financial coaching for parents and staff at Head Start and child care sites. I don't have any specific examples from the LIHEAP context, but you can imagine, an example of some kind of embedding with a LIHEAP service in that sort of way. And that's what we're here to think about. So why have people been thinking about integration, financial capability integration? There are a lot of different reasons why people have come to this approach. Some people have come to it for multiple parts of this, but for us in AFI particularly, we're a very small program. We're less than $20 million right now. Thinking about how we can leverage other programs that are reaching and touching more people has been a big part of our interest in this financial capability integration. A lot of cities are trying to figure out how to stretch tight budgets. And then there's the big piece about outcomes. If you improve someone's financial capability, can you improve other program outcomes? There's been some limited research showing, particularly with employment programs, that people who have gotten financial counseling had better job placement rates than people who didn't. So there's some indication in certain areas that there might be increased outcomes. We would love to see more research on this because we think that that's really the key to this integration. If in the example that we were talking about earlier, if a financially stable or improving someone's financial capability can improve their likelihood to pay their bills on time, their energy assistance bills, or to have continuous service, or to pay down, to those sorts of things, whatever performance measures I know you've been talking about this morning, then it makes the case for that kind of integration service all that much stronger. And then it also is about really reaching the clients where they're at, right? Trying to approach all of their needs and not say, oh, I'm only here to talk to you about this one thing, and that's the only thing I can really talk to you about. So as I mentioned, that we've at AFI have been trying to leverage this. We're a demonstration program, and we sort of take that seriously to think about what can we do with the knowledge that we're gaining. And we've been partnering with other programs within ACF, and then in recent years, even outside of ACF, to think about how we can leverage that and use these integration opportunities. And one of the ways that we reach other federal agencies is through the Financial Literacy and Education Commission, which is called the FLEC. And the CFPB is the co-chair of the FLEC, and that's one of the ways that we've built a partnership with them. So that's a little bit of a background of just sort of why the Office of Community Services is in this space, why the Assets for Independence program is in this space. And now I'm going to turn to the resource that we've developed that's much more interesting than this. So you all, I think, in your folders have a lovely flyer about our guide that's much prettier than just this slide is. This is a picture of the front cover of the guide. So the guide, it was just released at the end of March, and I'm really excited about it. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about it so you can think about how your organization or perhaps your sub-grantees might be able to use the guide. So the guide is an interactive resource for organizations that serve low-income or vulnerable populations and that are interested in integrating financial capability services into their existing programs. Our guide is not a resource to be used directly with clients. It's not designed to be handed to a client, or the tools are not to work through with a client. It's really a planning type resource for an organization, for program directors and organizational leadership. You'll see that as we go through this, that's sort of the orientation for our resource. The guide provides both structure and flexibility. We've designed it to be taken as a whole, where you can do a whole process from the beginning to end, but the tools also can be used individually if that's where your organization is at. If you just need to create a referral pipeline, you can take out our referral tool and use that by itself. And the tools are field tested and adaptable. Last summer, we pilot tested a draft of the guide with several organizations in the field and got their feedback, and we also invited other people to review it and give us feedback. It was incredibly useful, that whole pilot testing experience, and it gave us a lot of real-world examples that you'll see we've incorporated into the guide as we go on. So this is the table of contents for the guide. I have to say the guide is a little bit tricky to translate into a presentation because it's such a nice interactive tool. I encourage everybody at your leisure to go and download it and just play with it for fun. But this is the table of contents, and the format of the guide is an interactive PDF. So it functions a lot like a website, but it's not a website. You can download it and you can be on an airplane in airplane mode and still be using the guide. But all of these little things are actually links that jump you around to different parts of the document. So it's a little bit like choose your own adventure. You don't have to read it from page 1 to page 200 and whatever. So at the beginning of the guide are 4 sections that provide introductory and background information about both the guide and about financial capability integration. The foreword is actually written by Jeannie Chaffin, the Director of Office of Community Services. The heart of the guide are these sections and the tools that they contain. Each of the 3 main sections has several tools, including a final tool or capstone tool that pulls together all the other tools from this section. I'm going to go into those a little bit more in detail in a moment. And then the guide also includes additional resources that you can reference and use to complete the various sections and tools. Frequently asked questions, reference and resources. I'm going to be showing you the one-stop tool shop towards the end. The navigation bar on the right appears on all the pages throughout the guide, so you can use it to jump back and forth between the sections really easily. If you click on section 1, which I have a hard time seeing, section 1, you're taken to the first page of section 1. And you'll see that when you're in section 1, it expands, so then you can specifically see on the navigation guide the tools that are in section 1. And if you click on tool 3, then you go to the introductory page for tool 3. So tool 3, this is my way of getting us into section 1. Tool 3 is the final or capstone tool for section 1. You can see it says section capstone tool. And the focus of section 1 is on the client's financial capability. And it includes 3 tools that capture the current situation for the clients, client's current financial capability, then the outcomes that are desired, and then the final piece is pulling in what services will get them from point A to point B. We also call this the theory of change, which is something that people often talk about in program design. As you can see, that all these things fit together for this last piece. Oh, there's the piece where it says this section. Okay, so what are the financial capability services that we're talking about here? I said it's not just financial education, but what is it? So these are some of the sort of topic buckets, and underneath are the various services that we discuss in the guide. Some of these are duplicated on this list because they hit more than one topic, but there are essentially 10 services that are discussed in the guide. Financial education, financial coaching, financial counseling, credit building, access to safe and affordable financial products, free tax preparation assistance, access to federal and state benefits, including LIHEAP, incentivized savings programs, and asset ownership programs. So one of the things in preparing for this that I discussed with Lauren and Yulia to sort of think about the LIHEAP context was that many LIHEAP clients may have big arrearages or debt loads from unpaid utility bills. And so something like credit counseling to help them address that debt could be really meaningful to them. You know, one step beyond sort of just working out their household budget, but trying to find something that can help them address that debt. So returning to the table of contents, I'm going to quickly go over what's in sections 2 and 3. So once an organization has done that first theory of change and decided, okay, the services that we need to provide our clients are credit counseling and financial education. Once they've done that, then our tool, the guide, helps them decide how to do that. We offer 3 different approaches: refer, partner, and do-it-yourself, or DIY. The assumption is not that every organization has the capacity to do this themselves, right? Because we know that that's just not true. And there are often organizations in your community that may be able to do this, that are already doing this, and that might be a good partner for you, or a referral partner. So the tools in section 2 help the organization decide which of these options they're going to take for each of the services that they identified in section 1. We've called section 2 building the team. And these are the specific tools that they go through to make that determination. There's assessing your internal capacity, organizational capacity, and then there's doing an inventory of who's actually in your community. What are the people already in your neighborhood or county or region? And then not just who they are, but then what's their capacity. And then there's the capstone tool, which is actually deciding who will deliver the services. And that is this tool. So as you can sort of see, hopefully, it has a table that summarizes for each different financial capabilities service identified the key issues regarding organizational capacity, client access, and client fit among each potential service provider. So there may be somebody in your community that is doing something, but maybe they're serving a different clientele. They're only serving, maybe your clients are Spanish speaking and they don't have anybody who speaks Spanish, or there may be some sort of misfit that doesn't actually work to refer them there. So here you would identify all those things, and then you would actually select what is your decision. What did you decide to do for how to provide that service? Once you've done that, then you move into section 3, moving into action. This slide shows a summary of what the user will have completed after they've finished section 3. And there are similar summaries like this for each of the sections throughout the guide. So as you can see, this section focuses on developing an action plan for the integration. Here's a list of the section 3 tools. The first tool guides you through a process to detail the current program workflow. Where are you intersecting with the clients? What is the interaction that you have with the clients in your program? So that you can determine at what point is the best point to integrate the service. So, for example, if you've decided that you're going to refer clients to credit counseling, is that something that should be done at intake? Or perhaps if you have some sort of case management system, would it be better done later on after there's a rapport that's been built with a case manager and the client feels more comfortable to talk about these issues and they'll maybe have more trust in that? Tools 9, 10, and 11 are aligned with three integration options, with the three integration options, refer, partner, and DIY. Each of these is a specific tool to develop the plan based on whichever one you've selected. So if you selected referral, then you would develop the plan for tool 9. This is the sort of thing where if you've selected just one of these, if you're doing one tool, you wouldn't do all three of them, right? You just pick the tool that works for whatever your decision was. And then the final tool for this section is the capstone, not just for section 3, but for the entire guide. And it's the logic model, pulling it all together. And here's what that looks like. One of the things that the developers really liked about doing a logic model at the end is that also gives you a product as an organization that you might be able to take to funders or to your board of directors or to other stakeholders and say, here, look, all of this fits together. Here's our outcomes. Here's how everything fits. Plus, it's a model that I think is fairly well known in the field, right? So that was a really quick trip through sort of the main content of the guide. And then there's just a couple other features that I want to mention before I wrap up. I mentioned at the beginning that we pilot tested an earlier version of the guide. And one of the things that came out of sort of the requests from the feedback from that was this feature, which is actually a fictionalized example. It's a hypothetical community action agency that we follow, and it's called From Start to Finish, from the beginning to the end. There's an example of how they, as an organization, go through the whole process of the tool, and you can follow them throughout. It gives short narratives on their process, and also we have examples of how that organization actually completes the tools. So it gives people sort of a chance to see what it looks like if this is done in an organization. And that's also a way, that's how you can tell that it's the example as well as the blue text. Another result of the pilot testing are actual non-fictional real-world insights that have been incorporated into the guide as tooltips and lessons from the field. Finally, a quick word about the tools. On the intro page for each tool, there are links to the tools in 3 different formats. We offer them as fillable PDFs, which, as you know, a PDF form is not something that you can edit. You can't change the size of the columns, you can't add a row, but it's a nice, pretty document that you can sort of fill in, and if that works for you, that's great. There's also Word files where if you need to add a row, if you need to change a column, those are completely editable, so that we've offered it in that format as well. And then there's also, if you want to, you can download the example from the fictional organization, Hope Community Action, and you can have that example to print out separate from the guide. All the tools are found on those pages for each individual tool, and they're also found at the end in the one-stop tool shop that I mentioned at the beginning. So this is a way, too, where you can jump directly to Tool 10 or whatever and to just use those tools. You don't have to start with our Section 1 if you don't want to. So I put this in here as sort of a final slide with the link at the bottom, but you all have the handout, so that makes it even better. You don't have to try to memorize 1FXRLNE. And I also wanted to mention that earlier this year, there was a Dear Colleague letter that went out from the Office of Energy, from the Division of Energy Assistance on financial capability resources. And our resource guide was mentioned in that, as well as the resource that you're going to be hearing about next and some of the resources you're going to be hearing about from my colleague at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And there's other resources in there too, which I think are quite valuable. So then, transitioning between my resource and the next resource, we've been working with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to think about, the guide was being developed and as Your Money, Your Goals was been developed, theirs has been around a little bit longer than ours, to think about how these things fit together. And we've been this isn't the first time to do a joint presentation between these two ideas. And we think that they really fit well together, but sometimes we thought it'd be good to give some framing thoughts about that. So both of them, and it's a little bit weird because you haven't heard about his yet, but hopefully they'll connect it all together. So both of them are really flexible resources. They're designed for organizations to sort of adapt them to their needs and to their clients' needs. And then the starting point for both resources is really meeting clients where they're at and helping organizations use these resources to support their clients' progress towards their financial capability outcomes and goals. And thinking about if you or an organization were starting first with the guide and you went through the whole process of thinking about developing a plan for the integration of services, Your Money, Your Goals is mentioned in the guide as a resource, and it would be a great resource to prepare your staff as you move forward to implement the plan. Regardless of even if you're doing referrals or partnering, even if you're not doing the services yourself in-house, Your Money, Your Goals would be a great foundational tool to help build staff confidence and help them think about how to implement the plan that was developed. If you start with Your Money, Your Goals, then you might find that going to the guide, you might be able to figure out how to strategically target the staff in your organization that would get Your Money, Your Goals training, or what content that you actually use in that, or to think about how Your Money, Your Goals would specifically be integrated into your workflow or other parts of your organizational aspects. So that's my little bit, and I will now turn it over to Zachary. Sorry, I got too much stuff.
No. Well, good afternoon, everybody. First, Gretchen, I just want to say thank you. And also, I know I'm not alone in how excited I am about the guide and what it can mean for all of us. So we're really looking forward to a continued joint efforts at rolling it out. And I'm sure a lot of you were nodding along and thinking, wow, that's super useful. So I hope you'll continue nodding along and feeling that's super useful when I tell you about the next thing. But before I do, let me just say what's going to happen. First, I'll ask you a couple questions. Then I'll tell you a little bit about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and this new tool that we've developed for folks in situations like yours. And then I hope to facilitate a sort of a quick conversation about what it means and ideas you guys have for how to use it. So I hope as I go along and talk to you about some of these tools, you'll be thinking about how it fits into your context. And then we can talk about that a little. Make sense? Okay, great. So first, I said I'd ask you some questions. Who in here thinks of themselves as a financial expert? Right, that's what normally happens in places. Now, who has clients come to their organizations who have money problems? Well, see, that's exactly what this tool is designed to do, is find people who aren't traditional financial experts, but have people who come to them with financial problems and help them figure out how to equip frontline staff to manage those interactions in a way which connects with those people with their very real problems, even though probably we're not going to train those people into being financial experts. So that's what this is all about. Now that we have a little context, let me figure out which button makes it go to the next slide. Here we go. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Our bureau was founded in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008, and our goal is to make marketplaces for financial products safe for consumers. You know, it was often said that you couldn't buy a toaster that could blow up your house. Why could you buy a mortgage that could blow up your house? And that's the sort of animating idea. Is we want to make, we want the marketplace for financial goods to be one where consumers can understand the benefits and costs and the risks and prices of products right up front so that they can make good decisions about which ones work for them. We want it to be a place where no business can make profits and be successful based on hurting consumers through unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices. And we want the financial marketplace for consumers to be one where good companies are ones that deliver good outcomes for consumers. Does that make sense? I find that usually those are goals that people in most audiences can feel really supportive of. And I get the sense this is one of them. Okay, so I want to take a second and talk about one of the most important ways that consumers as individuals interact with the CFPB. On our website, it is very easy and very prominent that a consumer can submit a complaint. Who in the room has ever been in a situation where they had an unsatisfactory dealing with a bank or a credit card company or different kind of financial institution? Okay, if that's you, raise your hand and keep it up. Who, if your hand's not yet up, have you had a family or a friend who's been in a situation like that? Okay, and of the people who still aren't raising their hands, how about a client in your organization? Okay, good. By now, everybody's hands are up. So this is a resource that could really be helpful to all of you. So in a given month, the CFPB typically gets about 20,000 complaints for consumers, although sometimes far more than that. And what we do for consumers is create a situation where through the use of our bureau, we can help them get clearer answers than they would have got when they worked directly with the companies, and often better resolutions. But we encourage consumers to start by working directly with whatever firm it was that they had an unsatisfactory experience with. Can we get tremendously amazing outcomes for everybody who complains? No, of course we can't. But sometimes we can. So let me just give you one example, which is one that I found very, very personally meaningful from when I worked in the division of the Bureau that dealt with mortgage servicing. So there was a guy named Ronald who, well, his name isn't really Ronald, but for the purpose of the example, Ronald is a senior, he's a veteran, and he's blind. And he bought his house for $39,000 in 1978. And he was pretty sure that he had paid off his mortgage. But his mortgage switched to a new mortgage servicer, and they told him he owed $100 a month, and he was trying to find the paperwork that showed he paid it off, but obviously that's really hard if you're blind, you know, to find the paperwork. And he couldn't find it, so he figured, I don't want to get kicked out of my house. I'm just going to pay. So he was paying, and 4 years later, he filed a complaint with the CFPB, and we were able to get to the bottom of it for him. And it turned out he had paid off his mortgage, and he had paid off his mortgage 4 years earlier. And at the end of, and the mortgage servicer that had erroneously billed him for all those years and accepted in cash his payments, paid him all the money he'd paid back, plus interest, and plus some additional money. He ended up getting reimbursed $30,000. So, yeah, like I said, that doesn't happen in every case. It doesn't even happen in most cases, but it happens sometimes. And these complaints are also extremely helpful to us in understanding what's going on around the country, because we're a data-driven agency. So getting all this information about what's happening to people helps us do a much better job at focusing our resources on the things that are the most problematic. So let me just, before we move on, tell you a few really practical details. You can see over there in the upper right-hand corner of our website, this is, if you went to consumerfinance.gov today, you would see something very much like this. In the upper right-hand corner, you see that green text that says submit a complaint. It's easier because there's an arrow in this slide. There's not really an arrow. But so that's where you or a client that your organization is serving, or a family member, a friend, or even yourself, that's where you click submit a complaint. You can also go directly to that interface via consumerfinance.gov/complaint. And you might say to yourself, wow, that's, doing it on the website is kind of hard. What if people get confused? And that's definitely a problem. The way we solved it is by having live chat support all the time. So if you have an issue, you're confused by something, there's somebody waiting there to help you via the computer. You can also call our 800 number, which you can see right here. Also the alternative version for people with hearing difficulties. And we can handle calls in 180 different languages, which is a huge percentage of the languages spoken in the United States. So, and if you would prefer mail, that's feasible too. I think that probably for most people, the easiest is doing the internet-based one. And then we track and give you updates the whole way. When you get a UPS delivery and you can find out the package is in Duluth and it's on the way, to Minneapolis or whatever. Well, that's exactly what we have in terms of tracking your complaint as it goes through the system. You find out when it goes to the company, when the company response comes back. You have an opportunity to see whether that response is reasonable and so forth. And you can always log in and get the current status. You can also call in and get the current status. So that's our complaint system. I forgot to say at the outset, whenever anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand. No need to hold them till the end. I find it's often better when we're sort of having a conversation than when you're getting talked at. So speaking of questions, are people square on this whole complaint stuff? Does it seem useful? Could you guys imagine that being helpful to people you know? Okay, great. All right, so that's complaints. Now let me tell you about my part of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is our Consumer Education and Engagement Division. So we have two sort of offices in our division that serve the entire country. That's financial education, which produces mostly written materials, and consumer engagement, which produces mostly digital and interactive materials, although they both are invested in how to help people understand the financial markets in ways that make sense. I would tell you more about them, but I understand we're behind on time. So we also have four offices that deal with specific populations. That's the office that deals with service members and also veterans, the ones that deal with older Americans, which in our scheme is anybody who's over 62. We have an office that deals with students and people with student debt. And then we also have financial empowerment, which is my office. And in our office, we deal with economically vulnerable consumers, especially including low-income consumers. So that includes unbanked, underbanked, people who are making 200% of the poverty line or below, and a huge number of other people. So that's who I'm particularly focused on, but our group focuses on a very wide swath of Americans, including all sorts. So another thing that's worth noting is that our website is also available, almost all of it in Spanish. If anybody wants to access it in Spanish, it's at consumerfinance.gov/es for Espanol. Now, this might be interesting to a lot of folks in the room. Like Gretchen said earlier, it's like a little strange to show people in static how PDFs or websites work. But I'll just highlight a few interesting things that you can check out later if they are indeed interesting. So you'll see over here, there's a search box where you can put things in. One of the most useful for resource providers, like people who work in the LIHEAP system, will be the Ask CFPB area, where you can get cleared, vetted, expert content on questions that somebody might ask you that you may not know the answers to and want to find the answer. So in this, one of the most prominent, can you guys still hear me if I come over here? Okay, great. So right over here in Get Assistance, which is one of the most prominent headings on our website, the first choice is Ask CFPB. And there's this really, do you know how when you use the internet, sometimes you start typing something in and all of a sudden they can predict what thing you might want to know about? So we're trying our hardest to be able to correctly predict with as little typing as possible what people actually want. So if you type where can, you'll, as you keep typing, you'll get more and more refined lists with search autocomplete, which we find incredibly helps users get to what they want. There's also some common questions which a lot of people have when they come to our website. And then the last thing here, which I think is worth noting, is that you can filter the results by population. So I know a lot of people who come to LIHEAP are older Americans. Certainly not all, but many. And so you can restrict the results to your question to articles that have to do with older Americans, that kind of thing. If you want to restrict it to students or other various groups, you can do that too. We can also help people figure out how to pay for college. If you have questions about that, find me later because I know we're on a time budget here. We also have great resources for older Americans. Who's ever been in a situation where they had a friend or relative who was an older person with diminishing capacity and wasn't able to keep their financial house in order? Who's been in a situation like that? Yeah, so a lot of people have, and it can be really challenging if you're the person who ends up having to manage somebody else's money. So we've got a great resource guide for people who are in that situation. We also have a special curriculum that's designed for seniors called Money Smart for older adults. And again, I'm happy to answer questions about that. I'll be around for a little bit. Okay, so now here's the main thing that I'm here to talk to you guys about, the Your Money, Your Goals curriculum. And like Gretchen said, this is a curriculum that is designed for individual consumers. Well, that's not exactly right. It's designed for intermediaries who are working with individual consumers. So said a little bit differently, this is to help people who are not particularly financially expert, but ideally have some common sense. It's to help folks like that learn how to interact with people about financial topics as they come up. And it's really designed for people who are in a setting where the client or the person who they're speaking with trusts them and looks to them for guidance. And it's to enable them to give some help and figure out when it's reasonable to give help, when, like Gretchen was saying earlier, it's really better to build a partnership or do a referral. I'll talk a little bit more about what's in it, but I just want to make what I think of as a really important overarching point here. which is that the CFPB has an enormous mission, like I was saying earlier, about reaching Americans, helping them understand how to make financial decisions, and helping make marketplaces safe. We've got a pretty small staff with which to do it. So one of the things that we really try very hard to do is to connect with people who are out there in the field, who are interacting with Americans, and we want to work with you because we've got resources and we've got expertise and you've got relationships and a need for them. So the reason that I'm here more than any other reason is in the hopes that we can start working together so that all the things that we know about what Americans need can get matched up with the Americans who need them. Because you guys, each of you, and including the organizations who work with LIHEAP grantees who are active in your state, those are the key conduits where people's needs come in contact with people who can understand how to serve them. Like, that's you guys. You are the front line of figuring out how to help Americans, and I need your help, right? That's why I'm here. And I can help you, too. Hopefully what happens is we build a mutually beneficial partnership where people who come to you for help can get more help because we're working together. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and this guide is one of the most important ways that we can get expertise from Washington to the field. And where you guys can get pre-vetted material that's been developed and tested rigorously to work in your kind of context. So we already talked a bunch about financial capability and financial empowerment. You can see we have a graphic that looks similar to Gretchen's and is a little different. And if the differences are really interesting to you, you should come talk to Gretchen and I about them. So I'm going to mostly focus on what's in the guide. But I think that I will just say that I totally agree with what Gretchen said earlier. It's not enough to help people understand, how do you calculate compound interest rates or something like that, or compound returns. We need to be working on access and getting people the information they need before they have to make decisions. And we have to make sure that the context that they're in are ones that support making good decisions. It's not enough to just be literate. One needs to be empowered or financially capable, or ideally financially capable and financially empowered. Okay, so I was mentioning a little bit about our curriculum, and I'm just going to make sure that I didn't miss anything that I was supposed to say. Oh yeah, let me tell you a little bit. I mentioned a second ago that our curriculum was rigorously tested, and that's a big part of why it works. So we did a field test where 770 frontline people, so that's folks who work with homeless populations, social workers, people with some of our partners like Catholic Charities and Community Action Partnerships and various other national organizations with all sorts of different people working for them. 770 frontline people who interact with clients got trained in this and then used it. And we saw what happened. So in roughly 99% of cases, actually slightly more than 99%, people agreed or strongly agreed that the curriculum helped them understand financial issues better and helped them understand how to help people with financial issues better. So that was phenomenal, but it's not enough to say the program is successful. What made us confident that there's room for success and optimism that this can really help people is not just that it prepares frontline staff like you guys and people that work with you and people that work for you, not just that it helps you be more financially expert, but that it prepared people for situations that came up in their real work. And within 6 months, 2/3 of people were using it, and we think those numbers are probably higher now. So this is really useful. Consumers and clients find it really useful. Frontline people find it really useful. And my hope is that you will be among the 99% of people who find it really useful. So now the moment you've all been waiting for. What is in this your money, your goals thing that I've been talking about? So the first thing relates a little bit to what Gretchen was saying earlier, which is that we try to set the context and think a little bit about where this is happening and what's happening so that the frontline person can understand a little bit more about how to talk to people about money. Who finds it comfortable to talk with people about money? Yeah, that's what happens where I normally talk. So there's usually some people who are experienced with it, but most people feel like that's kind of taboo. So part of what happens in these introductory modules is we help people understand what things that work to have a comfortable conversation and how to lean in and how to start to have those conversations, things to keep in mind, what the toolkit is and how you use it. But this is, these are sort of broader picture stuff. This isn't the actual content yet. The actual content is pretty broad in terms of what's in it. We talk about setting financial goals. We talk about saving for unexpected situations, emergencies, and other things like that. We've got managing money as it comes in. That's incomes and benefits. We've got managing money as it goes out, paying bills. We also have cash flow, which is that's sort of how do you get through the month kind of stuff. We talk also about debt. What do you do when you're in debt? What are some different strategies for getting out of debt? Which work better than others in which kind of circumstances? Then we talk about, we have a whole section on credit reports and improving credit, which is obviously a very big and important thing in the LIHEAP context. And then one of the things we have that's unusual is that we don't tell people which product is the right product. Because there isn't a right or wrong product. There are products that are better or worse in different situations. That's why our curriculum is called Your Money, Your Goals. Because we're not in the telling people what to do business. We're in the helping people make informed decisions based on their situation. There's no product that is always wrong, although there are some products which are typically wrong. There are no products which are always right. You might say, well, you really need to get a checking account, but there's some people who aren't eligible or who it doesn't make sense. So, there's some products which are typically a good idea, but that's why this section is so helpful. It's not necessarily intuitive to people to think what sort of client would need what sort of product, but that section really helps with that. And then the last module is about protecting consumers' rights, so that they know what's okay and what's not okay, and you can help identify some issues where we might be able to be helpful in resolving a problematic issue. So anybody have questions about the content? Okay, I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to process it all. Now, I know this is a big curriculum. There's a ton of useful stuff in it. Sorry. Ooh, rewind. This is a really helpful toolkit. It is not a curriculum. And in fact, it would be...
I was going to tell Patty on you.
In fact, it would be easy to make that mistake. So easy that I just made it. So what does it mean that it's a toolkit? Which is that we pack it full of useful tools that somebody could use with a consumer, a client, a friend, a family member, or even themselves to make this an action-oriented thing. It's not just like, something you keep on a shelf. It's something that whenever anybody has a question, there's usually a useful thing in there to work through together. Whether it's a bill planning spreadsheet or whether it's a debt getting out of tool. And so I extremely recommend that you take a look at it because there's just a wealth of incredibly valuable stuff there. And in fact, I will make you a bet. Here's how it goes. If you look through this toolkit, I bet that you will find something that is useful to you, your family, or somebody that you work with. And if you look through, and I've lost this bet, I hope that you will email me. Then I will not make the bet. You will be the first person I've ever heard from to say that. I am extremely confident that if you look through it, you will find that it's useful to your situation. And here's how you can look through it. You could go to consumerfinance.gov/yourmoneyyourgoals, or you could just Google CFPB Your Money Your Goals, or anything that's vaguely like that. and you'll get to it. And you'll find there are 4 different versions. There's one for social workers. Sorry, not just for social workers. There's ones for social service professionals, which is much broader, actually. There's one for community volunteers. There's ones for people who work with worker organizations, such as unions. And there
Legal
is...
services.
Say it again?
Legal services.
Yeah, there's one for legal aid, which includes a lot more legal analysis. And thank you, guys. And is a little bit different from the other 3, but in ways that are really helpful for legal aid attorneys or often attorneys more generally. And you can also get the toolkit in Spanish. In fact, we're going to post it any day now. And there's also a lot of other training-related materials which are helpful, such as an implementation. Yes.
One thing that was mentioned before that I think would be good for this group is to say that the tool is written in plain language.
Yes.
What is it, 6th grade reading level? I can't remember what it is, but it's very direct and simple. It doesn't use confusing, scary words.
Totally. That is a phenomenal point. Everybody, including middle schoolers, should be able to pick this up and be able to understand what it means. This is built for people who care, but who don't necessarily have financial sophistication. This is not built for, people will find it very useful if they have a degree in finance and want to help people, but people also would find it very useful if they have no background in anything that's mathematical and if they don't necessarily know big fancy financial concepts or even little, not so fancy financial concepts. This is really for everybody with even the most basic understanding. And I am confident that everybody in this room knows enough to pick this up and have it be meaningful and useful and not confusing. So thank you. Man, that's the easiest question I've got all week.
She's a plant.
Let's see. So actually for this, I'm going to come down there. So I said that, so here's some resources. I think we talked about them all. You can email my office, the Office of Financial Empowerment, at the web address you see there. But now I want to have a little bit more open conversation. So, say it again? So the question you should be thinking about is what might you do with this stuff?
Yeah, so I think these tools are great and very interesting and very comprehensive. My question would be for agencies that are doing the intake and doing the work, is there a client tracking tool as well to be able to say, at intake, this is, and be able to follow the client through and be able to measure from the metric standpoint what the outcomes and success was?
I'm not sure that we have something that's specifically like that. We do have a referral. The referral pipeline tool might be adaptable to that kind of setting because the piece for the referral tool is really thinking we wanted to provide something to think about, not just here's a piece of paper, go talk to them. So thinking about, but it's also, the referral tool also talks about the sharing information back and forth. So I'm not sure if we have quite what you're looking for, but it's I'm going to write it down, client tracking tool, because I think that's a really good point. Say that again. Check, right. Or at least see, the other thing is there are sometimes other things that are out in the field already that we've linked to, but I'm not sure, because we have we link to some things about outcomes and stuff, because as every program is a little bit different on that. But the client tracking, if you see something in the resource guide that you think is good for that, let me know, but I might have to follow up on that.
Well, and in fact, one of the things that I see as a role we play at the Bureau, and I would not be surprised to learn that Gretchen sees as a role too, is to identify things that people are doing in the field that is working, and then to spread knowledge of that system. So currently, I don't think we have a software package available which does this sort of client management system, but we do have a lot in our guide that thinks about how to follow up with people and when and how. And I'd be really curious to hear whether other people are doing this and how you remember who to follow up with when and whether there are any tools that are useful. So if you're a person in such a situation, find me and I want to hear from you. Oh, right. I think
We like
that
to
the
watch the people
microphones.
microphone
You
run back
mentioned-
to side to side.
You mentioned that there's a link for community volunteers and social service workers in general. Is that do you have to receive training on using that resource before you can utilize it with potential users of this?
Oh, that's a great question. It's often helpful to receive some training, and if you're interested, let me know, and we'll try to find some training going on near you. Or if you're part of a group and you want to train a bunch of people, we typically run trainings for groups about 30 frontline folks in number. It's especially good if it's a broader organization. So. But you don't need training. Like we were talking about earlier, this is something where you can pick up the curriculum and look at it. Thank you. And it makes sense. The toolkit is intuitive, and you can pick it up and read it and do it.
And they do have some. Oh, it was on an earlier one. They do have some videos that are sort of train the trainer type videos that are on the CFPB's website as well to help, perhaps give, because I do think that if you as a LIHEAP state agency decided we want to train our sub-grantees at our next annual training on your money, your goals, like you obviously would need some preparation for that, right? You might be able to pick it up and look at it and think about that, but there has been some work that CFPB has already done, and you might be able to watch those videos or connect to one of their trainers to feel prepared to give that training then to your sub-grantees.
Right, and yeah, as usual, Gretchen's right, and those videos are awesome and really useful. And if you did want to be in a situation where you wanted a lot of your sub-grantees to learn about this stuff and they were interested, talk to us, because we might be able to arrange for a trainer to join you at that conference. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing we want to be helpful with, and the only reason that we wouldn't is that we have some resource constraints. But that's we'd want to be helpful there.
So what's the difference between the building financial capability and your money, your goals?
So, boy, that was loud. So building financial capability and a planning guide for integrated services, or the guide, is really more like I would almost think of it as a strategic planning process that an organization goes through to think about at a systems level. How can we think about getting financial capability services to our clients, and what services should those be? What is it that what outcomes are we looking for our clients, and what services would help us meet those outcomes? And then who do we need to partner? How do we provide those? And what's the implementation plan that we need to put together? Whereas your money, your goals is more of a direct interaction tool between your frontline staff and the client. So when they're having that conversation with the client about debt, they can pull out the debt module and say, okay, well, let's work through this. Let's work through this worksheet together. Or here's a self-assessment tool. Let's see where you're really strong or where maybe there's some challenges. And it's more of a direct resource for that frontline staff interaction with the client.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So just to put it a little bit more, you just say it a slightly different way. The guide is really about why you should do this work and how you should do this work, and your money, your goals is about what the work actually is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And Gretchen, does that seem right to you?
Yep. Oh, he's hustling. He's got you.
I hear this and I'm thinking CSBG, but I also know you all did something with case management. Is this somehow can be folded into case management that LIHEAP has under that assurance to then educate the clients and the agencies on it?
why they're in.
But I've been told the key word is Assurance 16. But there is some aspect of that administrative part, right, that might be more of an administrative planning thing as opposed to direct client services. But if you're also involved with community action funding, that obviously has even broader implications, right, and a larger array of services and things that could be integrated together.
So I want to change the direction for just a second. I want to ask you guys a question. So my question is, who's got some ideas about how this stuff could be useful to you? Like, just...
Yeah, go ahead, say it.
Oh no, say it. We're brainstorming. We just switched from answer from.
This is LIHEAP. And even for LIHEAP, because in the client intake process, you go through and you do the total assessment for a client. So when you're looking at their budget and you see that their expenses may exceed their income, and we sometimes would give them a ROMA problem, we call it, of income management. And then we can start doing the financial piece and educating that household, but we have to educate the staff to be able to do that. So that's how I see it being done. And then you can track those outcomes. You can utilize what's there and put that as a goal in their case plan. If they achieve it, you give it a target date and you measure it and track it.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we have in mind. So let me just say one thing which I forgot to say earlier, which is that the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit was built with low-income populations in mind, which makes it different from almost every other major financial toolkit or curriculum around. So, like, you know, we think a lot about people who are having troubles paying their bills. Like, that's the sort of key thing that this whole system is built around, and it's a thing that comes up a lot in your contexts, I think.